Welcome to the Long Island View. I'm Tom Mealy.
I am Tommy Moore.
And we have a really special guest here tonight to talk about some very important issues with our veterans. But before we get into it, I want to tell you that that meeting with Linda Ventura, we had the show, I'm sure you watched the show past, with Linda Ventura. Linda Ventura, obviously the mother of Tommy Ventura, the fellow who, 22 years old, died of a heroin overdose here on Long Island. She holds the phone up. She says, "I'll never get a text from Tommy again." National commercial. We are honored and to have her doing a show here on MHTV1, which is going to talk about the crisis of heroin
Which is
here on Long
it's an
Island.
epidemic.
In fact, the name of the show is Long Island in Crisis, and it certainly is.
Without a doubt.
You know,
Without a doubt.
heroin is probably the number one killer of our young kids today, because it's so easy to come by.
And don't think the wealthy they're at the top of the list.
Without a doubt, because they can get it. You know,
Could be
listen,
in any
folks,
neighborhood.
these people that are out there selling these drugs, they don't care about you. They don't give a damn about your family. All they care about is selling you that packet and having you come back for more. So if you think they're your friends, they're not. Talk to people. Watch the show that's going to be airing here this spring on MHTV1, and also where we want to thank Cable 20 for allowing it to air there as well. So we're really looking forward to that. In fact, I have a meeting with a very influential individual who's involved with a very big company here on Long Island. I want to hold it until we actually close the deal. But this guy is going to help sponsor that in a way that every individual who has a set of ears on Long Island will hear the message of Long Island in Crisis and this incredible show that we're going to be putting together here, along with Donna DiBiase, Linda Ventura, Anthony, I always forget his name, Anthony.
He's the numbers man.
And that's right, he's the numbers man, and he's the guy you got to stay and watch. But
I got to say one thing about that show, and which I thought was the most important point of that show, was how important it is for you parents that if you don't think that this is not happening on your block, and you live on Long Island, you've lost your mind.
You're in a box.
It's everywhere, and it's up to you parents to really, 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 truly be watching these kids, and not just your own kids, the kids on the block, because they're the ones who are going to take your kid down. So keep your eyes open, because it's everywhere. It's an epidemic on Long Island.
Well, you know, Tommy, my neighborhood, I mean, I'm not in Mutton Town, but I'm not in, a low-line area in Long Island either, but I'm in a more of an upper middle class area. It's an associated neighborhood, and people in my area, I'm not saying they're millionaires, but they're well-to-do. They're very comfortable individuals, and I'm not embarrassed to say that the kid right across the street from me, young kid, is a heroin user. He has been in and out of rehab centers, and I got to be quite honest with you, I'm just waiting for the day for the ambulance to go up there, and I'm going to look out my window, and they're going to be taking him away with a sheet over his head.
It's destroyed a lot of.
It's the reality of what's going on here on Long Island. It's the reality. So you parents who have kids that you think may be, or or their friends that are, you better take a stance to learn about this stuff, because it's coming down the pike, and it's going to be important for you to watch this show. But anyway, being that said, going from epidemics on Long Island to situations on Long Island, and it's pleased, I'll let you introduce.
This is Leann, and she is an advocate for the veterans, and she works strictly with the veterans that have given us our freedom. And I am so proud to have you here, because I I think what you do is amazing, because we are certainly, children, veterans, we're right there. And anything, that's why I asked you to come on the show, because in the conversations that we had, I was so impressed with what you do and how deeply you're involved, and how hard you work at it, and the amazing results that you've gained out of this. So, I mean, I guess we should just start maybe at the beginning of how you got involved to begin with.
Okay, well, first I want to say thank you for having me on your show. I'm deeply humbled, and I have to thank you, Tom, for your service. You served in the Navy, and I'm a product of the Navy, so I'm very partial to it. How I became involved was, I grew up in Southern California, and that's all I know is military. I thought we all joined.
San Diego?
Yeah, in the Los Angeles County, San Diego County. And, of course, when we become teenagers, our thing is we want to go date Marines because you have the Marine base there. But I did work for the Army the day I turned 16, and I was called back a second year by the Commandant. And it was just a wonderful experience. I went to join the Army, but I was pregnant. So back then, the military was not so friendly with women as it is today. It's come a long way. And I became a mom, so I married the Marine Corps, and I lived on base, got married on a base, and it was a great experience. So over the years, my career took me into the legal background as a litigation paralegal, where I gained a lot of insight. And then in 2009, I was volunteering when the economy had changed. I was unemployed. I was volunteering to help people, keep my mind sharp, and I noticed a need with veterans. They weren't really getting help. They were being denied. So I acquired my credentials from the VA, Office of General Counsel, and I've been helping them ever since. And
When you
it's
say
been
you're
great.
helping them, as a veteran, what are you helping them do?
I'm helping them with entitled disability benefits. You have a veteran who may, for example, some of my older veterans, or maybe like a gunner or somebody who worked in explosives, they may suffer hearing loss. So if they go in, they file for disability benefits because they may lose their job or have to retire early because they can't hear. So the disability benefits with the VA, it's actually like an insurance policy. When a veteran goes into the military, they have an entrance exam because you're going to become government property. So the military wants to make sure that you're healthy. There's a presumption of soundness when you go in. And when you come out, you have an exit exam. They want to know if the property's been damaged because you've been insured by the VA. And when they come to me, they've been denied their benefits. They're not receiving those entitled benefits. A lot of times they're income restricted. So a lot of them have already been homeless, or they are homeless. They're trying to get back up on their feet for various reasons.
A great deal of them.
Yes. There was a time that more than half of my client base was homeless.
Are you talking about more post Gulf, or are you talking about prior to the Gulf War?
I would say prior. Right now you have a lot of Vietnam veterans who were denied for many years because it was a different mindset in society back then when we had the Vietnam War.
When a veteran goes in, because I remember when I went in, I was over there right off of where the Throgs Neck Bridge is. Was that Fort?
Fort Taunton?
Is that what it was? I don't even remember. It was so long ago. But
Schuyler?
you went in, yeah, they gave you the examination. I didn't have an exam coming out. Never did.
Yes.
I exited the Navy a little bit unusual, and maybe off the show I'll explain why. But honorable discharge. It's not that I got thrown out or anything like that.
Okay.
But I exited in a very unusual way. I don't know of any of my friends who exited the right way were ever given a physical. Are those people that were not given physicals, are they entitled to anything at all? And how do you differentiate between people that have disabilities that are now in their 50s and 60s, because that's where they would be if we're talking
Later than
about
that.
early 1970s or prior to 1970.
During the
How do
60s.
you differentiate from the disability that they may have acquired during the time out of the Navy and the disability linking it to an issue that occurred while in the Navy? Or, Navy, in the armed forces.
Yeah, that's a very good question. There are 5 main components about a claim, a disability claim, because if you look at the structure of the VA, it's a cabinet, and it's divided into 3 categories with all these little sub-entities. The one cabinet, one section you have is the regional office where you acquire disability benefits. You have medical, that's where you have your medical facilities, and underneath that vet centers and so forth. And then you have cemetery, which is where you obtain education, your VA home loans, things of that nature. So under the disability category, what they look for, number one, you have to have a nexus to active duty. If you don't have a nexus, you have no claim. Once you establish that there is a nexus, there's 4 types of claims. You have a direct claim. Say, for example, you were hit by a car, you broke your leg, you got some residuals, or maybe the leg became a little bit shorter as a result of that break.
While
That
in
would
the
be direct.
service.
While active duty, yes.
Right, okay.
So that would be a direct claim. A secondary claim is, say, for example, you broke the leg, which is a direct claim, but now you may have peripheral neuropathy because of that break, some nerve damage, which would be secondary to the original claim. And then we also have presumptives. Presumptives, of which you hear a lot more with the Vietnam veterans, not so much with the other war periods, Agent Orange, which is actually an umbrella. That was part of an Operation Ranch Hand. It is a whole slew of the rainbow herbicides that were sprayed during the Vietnam War. You have your Agent Orange, purple, white, green, blue, and pink. And they were sprayed at different times in different areas throughout the world, and even at some of the bases stateside here in the U.S. So what has happened over time is we've completed a lot of studies, and now we know that if people are exposed to these chemical compounds, it increases the likelihood of them developing certain ailments. That's where we acquire presumptives. So it's presumed, say for diabetes, that's one of the main ones, ischemic heart disease, which was added in 2010. It's presumed that if a veteran who served in these designated areas where these chemicals were sprayed, then we know it's presumed to increase the likelihood and is what caused it. So that's a presumptive.
What was the first one?
For Agent Orange,
No, the first part of this, where you, like, say you broke the leg, what is that?
that's a direct claim.
Let me ask you this. If I can prove, or if anybody out there can prove, that they had a direct while in the service and did nothing about it, and now 40 or 45 years post-service, they're starting to see some sort of issues that may come from that direct. How do you assist that individual? And I can make it clearer, because I'm going to utilize myself for a second. I usually don't talk about what I did or how I did it, but and I don't want to get into that. But when I was in, I was hurt many times in many different reasons. I've had my jaw was broken multiple times, my nose, my arms, my legs, et cetera, and all my, just about all the bones in my bodies were damaged.
Okay.
So years later, 45 years later, I'm starting to feel residuals in the joints as a result, or what I think maybe is a result of that. How do I prove that? And how do I wind up with a disability benefit?
Okay, well, I'm assuming you see a physician regarding your medical condition.
My jacket is loaded.
Okay, so what we do is we go through, when we look through your service treatment records, we look through your service military file for any indication about the incident. I mean, obviously, if you had bones broken, you would have been treated.
I was,
And
many
then-
times.
Then what we look for is the treatment after.
There wasn't
And-
any.
Well, you've had to go to the doctor at some
No.
time. Most people.
After I was hurt,
Right.
let's take the jaw, for instance. I woke up, I was in a hospital in Barcelona, I believe it was, and my jaw was wired shut. I stayed in that hospital for about 6 weeks. The wires came off. I shipped stateside to, I think it was Norfolk, Virginia at the time. And then after about 6 weeks stateside, I went back to normal active duty. No
This is-
follow-up.
All right, this is what the VA would do. You would submit a claim with documentation stipulating when you initially broke the jaw and where you were treated at. Once you submit, it's called an initial claim. So once you file that initial claim, then they would probably call you in for what's called a compensation and pension examination. The VA has a right to have a doctor examine you to see what the residuals are, how it's impacted your life. because every disability, if you look into the Code of Federal Regulations and the VA's regulatory manual, which is a NR 21, there's like a whole protocol. So there's a stipulation within the Code of Federal Regulations called the rating schedule. So it's under the muscular system, and they would look at the jaw, and then there's symptomology that you look at according to each of the ratings. And it would be broken down to, just as an example, I don't know off the top of my head without looking at it, it would be like at 0, 10, 20, and it would go up to 100.
And they can still get that jacket 40 years later?
Yeah, and a lot of them, yeah. A lot of my cases, I
Can
can
they,
tell you.
or-
There's always that possibility without
But let's
even.
assume they can't get the jacket. Now, I know that the area where my jacket was held had a massive fire. It was Ohio. I don't know if you remember that.
The St. Louis?
I believe it was, is that
Yeah,
where they
it was
keep
in
the
the
jackets?
70s.
Right. Now, that jacket was in that facility. Now, I've never seen it since, but my point is, and I want to get off of me for a minute. Let's take the person who comes to you and says, you know what, I was hurt. I hurt an extremity during my course in the service. And I was in the service back from let's say 68 to 75. And let's assume that that jacket was in Ohio at the time of the fire and is no longer there. How do you make a determination? I mean,
There's a procedure.
arthritic issues as we get older, especially in joint areas, it becomes a very, very difficult thing. And, you don't have to be a physician to know that if you have some sort of a fracture of the ankle or the wrist or any massive joint in the body, that the joint really never heals. So the arthritic issues as you get older are going to be more prominent than if you didn't have that break.
Okay, let me answer
So how do
you.
you fix that?
This is what we do, and I've had cases exactly as what you're talking about. You are able to go back and recreate the record. There are specific forms that we submit. They go back to the medical facilities. They research some of that. I mean, a lot of my cases, because I specialize in what's called Q, and that's like, it stands for clear, unmistakable, erroneous error. That's when we're looking for evidence that the VA had the information within their possession at the time that the decision was decided, and that they did not utilize all the evidence within their possession. And if they had, it would have changed the course of the outcome of the claim. And sometimes what we have to do is go back and recreate the records. So we submit the forms, we write to the bases, we put together your entire history of active duty. And we've been able to do that. One of my colleagues in another state, he actually ended up writing to the provost marshal to acquire a report of an incident that involved his veteran and won the case on that. I've had cases just with a photo. I didn't have the evidence, and with that one picture, I've won the case. So it depends. You really have to put together a lot of the evidence. You
And
got
you
to
think
think
that the
really
federal government is
outside.
going to provide some sort of and I'm saying Social Security or a partial or permanent disability to that?
Oh, I know they do. I can tell you a case I just won recently. It was a Korean War veteran, and it was hearing loss. He wasn't getting a proper claim for that. He served in the Korean War, obviously had to quit working because he couldn't hear anymore, had to retire early. And in reviewing, when I had the hearing with the judge, we found that there was some issues with the actual rating on that particular claim. When I went back and reviewed his entire file, back in the year of 2000, they made a mistake. So I was able to actually get that claim that he was denied previously reopened, but recently the VA, he's already been paid for that. They only paid him back to 2012. So now we're sending that case back to Washington to have it properly adjudicated, so the retroactive will be to 2000. So, I have another case. I mean, you talk about some of these things.
It sounds like she knows what she's doing.
She knows.
I'm very serious when I go into hearings. I had another case.
What does it take? We're getting older, we're not getting any younger.
Right.
To me, I watch litigation proceedings all day long.
Mm-hmm.
It takes years and years and years. I can only imagine that a case like I just explained to you, in my opinion, it would take 10 years before you'd ever get an answer back.
No, not true. It depends. And because I've had some of my cases, I can tell you, this is what the VA is doing. You had that issue when everybody was screaming, backlog, backlog, backlog. But what they weren't really looking at is, why do we have backlog? Okay, what do we do to fix it? So what they did is the VA was under so much pressure, especially by veteran organizations. And, there's a lot of politics with that. And so they decided all these claims, which now has overburdened the Board of Veterans Appeals. One judge has 2,000 plus cases on their docket. And then they usually have roughly about 15 lawyers who write for them. So when we have the hearings, what they're doing now is saying, okay, we'll keep the record open for 60, 90 days, and you have that much time to complete whatever it is we discussed in the hearing. Usually when you go into a hearing, we talk off the record a little bit. I always like to let them know what I'm going to do. I tell them, these are the issues. I think I'm going to ask for a continuance because I've realized we need to do A, B, C, and D. What I don't want to have, and sometimes I have to have that, is a remand back to the regional office because then it takes longer. And, especially of my veterans who are a little bit more seriously ill or we have age issues, I want to get this done as soon as possible. And also what I'll do with my veterans is if I see, and I'll give you an example. One of my Vietnam veterans, he came to me for an appeal only. It was for a mental disability. And after reviewing his file, I saw he was entitled to, it was like 12 additional claims legally. These are entitlements. This is not welfare, it's entitlements. They earn these. And I put in all those claims. And I had those settled before I settled his appeal.
Do you work with JAG, or are you outside of that area?
I'm outside of that area. That's for
Do you
active
work
duty.
with them?
I've had some veterans call me during active. They've
When
had
you
some
say
issues.
attorneys, that you work with the attorneys, are you working with private attorneys, you work with military lawyers?
I'm working with neither. I work for myself.
You work for yourself.
Mhm.
So when you go into that courtroom, you're arguing as a non-attorney,
Agent is what they
as
call
an
me.
agent
Yeah.
for
The veteran.
the veteran.
My credentials are issued by the Office of General Counsel,
Impressive.
Department of Veterans Affairs in Washington, D.C.
You want to find
And
person too,
you can
right?
actually go into the accreditation page if you click on agent and even type in the zip code here. I'll be the only female. There's only, I think, in the entire state of New York, I'm not sure on the number. Last time I checked, there was only 5. When I first acquired my credentials in 2010, there was less than 100 of us in the country.
Okay, how do you get paid?
On
You can't
appeals
be
in
doing
2
this as a
cases.
volunteer, Nace.
Well, part of what I do, I receive no compensation. I do it because I know how. And, I just do it because they need it, you know?
Don't you think that
Bottom
the
line.
military should compensate you somehow?
How
I mean,
the-
you're doing what they have failed to do.
What the law says is that for Q and appeal cases, I'm entitled to 20% of the retroactive I win for the veteran. There's a process. You cannot take the money directly from the veteran.
20%.
20%, that's it. That is the least amount in any facet
The
of law.
least or the most.
It's the least. Social Security pays 25%.
So let's assume that you win $100,000 worth of compensation.
For the veteran, I'll get
For-
20%.
You get 20,000.
I would get 20,000. And how I see that is that actually covers all my expenses because I travel. I've grown throughout the United States, strictly word of mouth, because I win. I've only lost 1 case in
bet.
Washington since 2010. I'm very serious when I go in. I've had to withdraw 3 cases because once I got in there and started looking at the evidence and the facts, they were frivolous. And there's a procedure for that too. I'll withdraw them and I'll tell the veteran, you're not going to submit this because it's not even a valid claim, and you're taking space away from a veteran who is in dire need and entitled to this benefit. And, that's part of what contributes to backlog. Believe it or not, 89% of all the VA claims, disability claims, are decided properly. You only have roughly about 11% that have errors.
I got to be quite honest with you. I'm a little disappointed with the way that the system works. I'm not disappointed with the hospitals. I think the hospitals in general work really well. What I think I'm aggravated with is the line of communication that's between the hospitals and the staff that's there. I think that the communication portion is terrible. The stat situation is right on. I mean, I have never seen, you walk into the VA hospital in Northport and you tell them that your chest hurts And there, I mean, you're in triage within minutes. You
Yes.
walk into this lousy Good Samaritan hospital down in West Islip, and you tell them your chest hurts, they tell you take a seat. And I mean, I don't really think they give a damn whether you have a heart attack or not. But
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I appreciate about what the vets do over in Northport. They're very on target. But inside, deep inside the communication, and I've been there as well, on some related health issues where I was appalled at the communication. I could have lost the ability to walk because the communication was so bad. So that's my opinion with it. But I think you're doing a great job.
Well, I want to just say, we only have about 3 minutes left, but this is what this show is all about, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's
But
a lot of veterans on the
I
island.
really do want to touch on, why are there so many homeless veterans? And how far have we come? I know we work very closely with Three Hots and a Cot.
Right.
You know,
Great
we work very
program.
closely with them. A friend of mine is doing a benefit for them, I think, this weekend. But we're going to be doing some stuff with them also. But I hear a lot. I mean, like, this is just, how can we be at a point where these guys that are allowing us the freedom to walk around free, how are we allowing them to live under bridges and in the woods and walk around mentally unstable and without help? I mean, why is this happening, and why is it so rampant? Why is?
Before you answer that question, I want to do something that we've never done before, because this is so important to people here on Long Island, especially the veterans, that I'm going to say something to our control room right now, and I want you to stay right where you are.
Okay.
I want to thank you for watching the Long Island View. What we're going to do is something a little different. We're going to go to part 2 of this conversation, which those of you who are watching on Cable 20 will see next week. All right? But for those watching tonight, stand by. We'll be right back with part 2 of this incredible conversation regarding the Long Island veterans here, right here on Long Island. We'll be right back.
Yeah, but you were challenging me. A lot of people won't.
Hi, welcome back to part 2 of the series of veterans here on Long Island. Last week, if you remember, we were talking about the ability to have your case heard if you have a disability, either prior to the Gulf War or post-Gulf War. And we're sitting here today. Tommy, would you like to introduce our guest?
We have the magnificent Leann here, and I mean, how good is she?
She's amazing.
This
She's
is
amazing.
what this show is all about. Now, here is someone from Long Island that's stepping up to the plate and doing the right thing for the right people who, in my opinion, are the people that allow us to be sitting here and doing what we do and walk freely throughout with our days and do whatever we do. I mean, who better to be taken care of? But as we ended the last show, I'm very concerned, and I would like to know where we're at with the, there's such a rampant of disabled and homeless and mentally unstable and veterans out there, and they're not receiving the help. And I want to know, I know a lot of private groups are helping, but where is our government with this? I mean, where are we at with this? Because, I mean, like I said, we work very closely with Three Hots and a Cot. And that simply provides them 3 meals and a place to sleep. Because these guys are living under bridges, in the woods, wherever, in cars. And, I mean, these are the people that allow us to live free.
Right.
And I really want to know, from your perspective, where we are and how did we get here? And we're losing 2 a day, 2 an hour. Suicide.
Right.
2 an hour. That's 48 people a day killing themselves.
Yeah, the numbers are high.
It's sad. I mean, it's sadly sick. And I mean, in my opinion, before anyone in this country, they should be at the top of the list of being taken care of. Else, we wouldn't even be able to do what we
Well,
do.
you know,
We'd be
in all due
limited.
respect, a lot of them, correct me if I'm wrong, they choose to live that way.
Some of them,
Well,
no.
I would
but there's
think-
gotta be
There
a
is
seed.
a percentage
I
that
would
does
think that the
choose.
percentage is very close to 50-50 that choose to live that way.
But
And
there's
they-
something, don't you think there's something wrong though?
I
if
think
they
there's
choose to
something
live
wrong, but
that
Tommy,
way?
you can't, I mean, you can lead the horse to water.
No, that's
You know,
true.
what I think
That's true.
happened was, whatever happened, wherever they may have been, all right, something either was turned off. And whatever was turned off, either they have no faith in society, the way society is today, they have no faith in our government. I mean, shit, I don't even have faith in our government.
Oh, I don't
All right?
either.
I
either.
don't.
But I will
All right?
say-
And I'm not, and at least I think I'm not insane.
And on the other side of that coin, though, which I know what you're saying, and I don't know. To me, I feel there's a mental imbalance there with that. But on the other side of that coin, I have seen these guys that have gotten this help and have received this help, and their lives have turned around. And I mean, it seems like that it should be a process that should be automatically happening throughout our government. And I don't understand why it's not, and why private sectors have to come in and bail these guys out. I don't get it. And, you know, I mean, we just did a thing in Northport where, we didn't do it, but we filmed it, where they gave, I think, 4 homes away, mortgage-free homes to wounded
Right.
warriors. I mean, but that's all separate stuff, you know, I mean, where is the government here?
I
mean,
know that you're dying to answer this question, but I got some deep-rooted problems with this whole thing. You know, you look back to the Korean War, you look back to World War II, you look back to the Vietnam War, the small wars that we were having. So let's take ourselves and put ourselves to 1965.
Okay.
Maybe, let's go a little early, 1963, okay? All of the individuals that were in some serious war, we're not talking about tanks that are armor-proof. These guys were boots on the ground. This was some serious stuff that they went through. The Korean War, World War I, World War II, you know, and into Vietnam. That was true boots on the ground. What we got today is not really like that.
No, it's a very different type of war.
Very different war. Tell me why there are more individuals in the military that seem to have more psychological problems than there was prior to 1965, and do you think it's a crutch?
But before you answer that, is in fact that true?
Is it a crutch?
No, is it true? Is there a,
I don't think it's necessarily what you're saying. I think this is of my
because I know
opinion.
Vietnam,
I can
that
take-
was my era.
Right.
And I can't even count the countless friends that came home that were never the same.
Right.
They were never the same.
You know, I have the opinion, and actually it's by speaking with a doctor. His name is Dr. Sean Evers, and he's also a consultant to the VA. And in talking to him about the psychological disorders, PTSD, you know, PTSD is an abused term now. It
Without a
really
doubt.
is.
Yeah,
Because,
I agree.
you know, everybody, if you look at what it is, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It's treatable. It really is. If you get somebody into treatment right away, they can either be cured or they'll be cured to a certain point. It depends. There's other factors that
But
kind of
why
go
did
into
that
that.
come out? Why did that just come out?
Well,
Where
we
was
used to
that?
call it different
Well,
names. It was
50
called
years
different
ago.
names.
Yeah, but
It used to be called shell shock.
But
You
isn't
know,
it also a different army now too? I mean, they're not being drafted, they're not, like,
It's a
they don't want
volunteer.
to go. You know, these are guys that are in the reserves mostly,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Okay, so
reserves.
I mean, it's
all
a
of these
different
people
ballgame.
that decide that they want to go in now, all of a sudden they become Captain America, and these heroes that go in, they go in with this tough guy attitude that I'm going to go and take care of, and I'm going to help make the world a better place, and then they come back, and then the next thing you know, they're living under railroad bridges and under tunnels. Do you think it's a crutch because the government allows it to be a crutch? That's my problem.
Well, this is what I'm asking. I mean, how much of it, how much do you think the government should be stepping in to
Let
help
me
these
tell you what
people?
they're
Because, I
doing.
mean, to me, it should be endless.
Here's what the
I mean,
government is
I know what
doing.
you're saying. There are some people that are out there.
I think they're out there. I think that they went in, they decided to served their country, and they came out and said, you know what? I'm going to get a free ride. And personally, I mean, you know, I'm always the glass is half empty. You know,
Yeah, but I don't think living under a bridge is a free
You know
ride.
what?
I know.
I,
No,
listen,
it's
I'm
not.
not saying that living under a bridge is a free ride, but what I'm saying to you is there is a lot of people. I walk through that VA hospital, and I look at those people
Mm-hmm.
walking the hallways, and I look at them and I say, you know what? Is this guy just looking for, you know, 3 hots in a cot?
Yeah.
Nothing
Well,
against,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Right.
you know.
No,
what's
I
his
know what
name?
you're
But-
saying,
but
but I would say the majority of them are legit.
I'm going
You
to
know-
allow you to speak.
Okay. You know, I can tell you, you're both right in some aspects. There is a percentage out there that is looking for a free ride. Because I've had some veterans, very small numbers, I will tell you, that'll call up and say, well, didn't they make the PTSD requirements relaxed now? And they're trying to say, oh, I got PTSD, or, you know, they just come up with certain things. Or, you know, most veterans who are really suffering don't come out and just say, I got PTSD.
Right.
You have to kind of really talk to them and kind of watch them. You know, a Marine I was helping out in California, I was helping him put in some claims, and I'm watching him. He's very humble, and he was involved in some stuff in Afghanistan, and he completed 3 tours. So while I'm talking to him, I said, you know what, I'm going to put you in for an acquired psychiatric condition. I want you to see a doctor. He's like, why? I'm fine. Well, he's not quite fine.
Right.
More of what I saw with him was a little bit of anxiety. He had the attention and deficit stuff going on a
And
little
hiding
bit. And he's saying, I'm fine, I'm fine.
Right.
And he's been out less than a year, and I'm telling him, you're not fine. I really would like you to get in there because, you know, when they're coming home, they actually, when they're being separated from the military, when you asked about like how the government, what are they doing, they actually do put when they're still active, they'll put them through a process to get out. And they're informing them of their benefits, they're really stepping up to give them those examinations. Before they even get out, if they're entitled to disability claims, they're putting them in. It comes down to people, making sure you're getting with the right people who are informed of this or doing their job the way they should be.
Well, what would you recommend to a vet that came back from the Middle East and is lost but
Number
not,
one,
not
make it-
medically lost, but maybe just lost, and where he's drifting from job to job and whatever, you know, where does he go?
Well, he can come to us now, Veteran House.
Well, this
Because-
is the word I want to get out
Yeah,
there.
Veteran House is actually a sister company to Veterans Protected. When I formed Veterans Protected back in 2010, it was mainly with the appeals and everything. And like I said, I started taking on a lot of other duties to help veterans that there is no compensation. I did it because I know how. And like, you know, you have a veteran, for example, I used to be contracted with Nassau County, no more. But I saw a veteran with a box wandering the halls. You know, the VSOs are walking past him. Nobody's asking him anything. So I walked up to him and I said, what are you looking for? What's going on? He said, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. I need some medication. He had an issue. I had to take medication for it. I said, okay, are you enrolled in VA healthcare? No, I'm not. I said, well, let's go online. I'll enroll you right now. We'll get you some doctor appointments. And I asked him, what's in the box? He said, all my medical records. Well, let me take a look at those. So we sat down. I went through the entire box, and I enrolled him in VA healthcare. I enrolled him in e-benefits. We put in his initial claims. In 7 months, came straight out the door, 70% service connected, all his benefits. I explained to him about vocational rehabilitation. I advised him to take roughly a year off because he was involved in some heavy combat in Iraq. And, Afghanistan. So I said to him, you know, you should take a little time off. Reacclimate yourself to civilian life because this is a little bit different. I want you to concentrate on the driving because when you're in a combat zone, your driving techniques, your interactions with people, it's very different than you come back to the States and you're dealing with civilians who don't understand the concept of what you've been through. So I want him to readjust, and he took my advice, and he's actually doing fine now. So, you know,
Yeah,
you
I
just
mean-
have to kind of guide them, and when you
Well,
see
that's
them.
why I'm glad that this is what I want to get the word out. I mean,
Could it
for
be
these
that
guys that are
technology
watching.
is what made us the way we are? You know, the people that came out of the military back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we didn't have the technology we have today. Do you think that technology has anything to do with the way that these people are reacting?
In some ways. I mean, we're on overload of technology and
So
social.
they come out and they're
everything.
inadequate now to the latest technology. I mean, technology changes day by day.
Oh,
Let's
no,
take the
veterans
average
are,
day-
no, veterans are way ahead of a lot of
On
civilians.
technology? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? I'll tell you what, the stats actually, you have statistics that prove veterans make better employees. They have lower rates of foreclosure and home ownership. These are all proven facts. They are more structured, they're more hardworking, more disciplined. I'll tell you, with Veteran House, the company that we're getting
Better
up and
parents.
running, strictly veterans and their families. Because, I tried with Veterans Protected Civilians, and I'm getting people who want to play on their phones all day. They're not taking it serious, the jobs. And, but it's a whole different mentality with veterans. Veterans are by far better employees than a lot of civilians.
And also too, I always talk about this on my own show. And again, no offense to these guys who sit in front of Home Depot, looking for jobs from out of the country and that. It's the guys that are picking them up that I have an issue with. Why not go to the VFW? Why not go to the American Legion and pick up these guys that gave you your freedom and give them a job? Because, I mean, is there a place where where you can go to hire veterans that are skilled, whether it be carpenters or plumbers or whatever it is, is there a place? Because, I mean, I would love to see these people picking up these guys that are giving you your freedom rather than guys that,
But
I
Tony,
mean,
there's
let-
technical and there's
Yeah.
issues all behind that. You gotta remember one thing, that let's take the average guy that comes out of the military. Let's assume that tomorrow, you and I open up, veterans in a box.
Right.
All right, and all the veterans that are willing to, carpenters and landscapers that are willing to work are in
Right.
that room right there. Okay? The problem is not the people that are willing to work. The problem is the employees that aren't willing to pay. That's
I
the
agree,
problem.
I
All right,
agree,
so you
I
can't
agree.
say,
Well-
go get a vet. It's those people that own those construction companies that are saying,
that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't want to
That's-
pay
that's my
disability,
beef.
I don't want to pay workers'
and
compensation.
they don't even want to pay them because what
All
are they
right,
going to do?
So
Sue
those
me.
are the people you got to go after.
That's what I just
That's
said.
right, I
That's
agree
who I
with
have the issue
But I
with.
will
That's
tell you
crap.
this too, a lot of with the job fairs and what I see is there was a job fair, I want to say roughly about 2011. It was just strictly for veterans, this job fair. And I was there and I'm watching, you had a lot of employers there, some of them wanted to pay very well, some of them do. And you had veterans walking around. What I didn't see by the people who put that job fair on is the lack of interaction. I went to a lot of the employers and asked them, what type of veteran are you looking for? What does your company do? Some of them were saying, I need somebody out of the Navy because they have certain skills that we're looking for that you would acquire in the Navy, or somebody in the Air Force because, each of our armed forces, they bring different things to the table, bottom line. So
Right.
it's really getting in there and having that communication. You do have some companies that do that. There are some organizations. Now, you mentioned the American Legions, VFWs. Okay, over the years, they have been on a decline on membership. You go to one of those posts, and a majority of them, not all, are senior veterans.
Right.
And, now it's kind of like, the younger generation has a different mentality. I will tell you, with Veteran House, as we bring veterans into our organization, they have to join an American Legion or VFW. And having those communications, like one of our events that we are trying to schedule now, is bringing in those two different timeframes. And, having the older veterans be like the command, it's paintball is what we're doing. And sending the younger guys
That's
into
great.
combat. It's how do you interact them? Because, the older veterans, I was speaking to somebody who's in Washington at the American Legion. That's a big concern of theirs, and they don't know how to approach it. And bottom line is, you have to listen to the other side, too, and say, why don't you want to join them? What's your perception of these organizations? What do we need to do to change it for the time so we can be around for another 100 years? I think
And-
these posts are phenomenal.
And I think a big part of that is, you can instantly relate to somebody that lived it, that did it, I mean, and to a younger guy that maybe a guy from World War II could come, and straighten somebody out a lot easier than somebody even his own age, because they've been there, they've done it. You know,
Right.
they've lived past it. You know, they could give them some insight of how they got through it, you
Right.
know? I mean, I think it's a great
I
thing.
think there's veterans out there that really, really, really need your help that don't know you exist.
That's
And,
why I have her here.
And, you know, I want to give out your number a couple of times, so if you're watching right now and you don't have time to run and get a pen, all right, we're going to give it out again, so I'm not going to take
And
you
you
to get
can-
up and
you
leave,
can
but
run
go
it
get a
back.
pen. Or grab your cell phone and write it in. They want to get a hold of you, how do they reach you?
Okay, for my main company, Veterans Protected, I have a webpage. It's 516-847-2182.
That's the webpage?
No, that's the phone number.
Oh,
The
okay.
webpage is www.veteransprotected.com.
Simple as that, veteransprotected.com.
Right, and then we have Veteran House. The phone number for them is 516-605-0971. That webpage is www.veteranhouse.net.
Now, on veteransprotected.com, do you have a hyperlink to the other page?
Not yet, but we're working on that.
You should, yeah.
Yes, I have
And
one of
vice
my
versa.
veterans who's doing
Keep it
that.
going back and forth.
Yep.
So go get a pen, we're going to mention these numbers again in a few
And you
minutes.
gave out your number also, right?
Yes,
I
Veterans
truly
Protected.
feel that there are veterans out there that are really putting their hand out and they need help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that your organization is a great one to actually make that happen from the perspective of, again, prior to, you know, certain times of war and then after that. So I think that's great. You answered a lot of questions for me.
Yeah, I mean, look even for you now. I
You
mean,
know,
you could
I mean,
actually
I
go
don't
back.
know that I would actually do it, you know, only because I'm stubborn in so many different ways. But
But we would be
I know
willing
you
to
would
help
be
you,
very happy to,
absolutely.
but you know what? That was 40 years ago,
That's
and I
okay.
leave it 40 years
Yeah,
ago.
but
That's
if
okay.
you earned it and
You
deserved
earned
it.
it. These are
The bottom line
entitlements.
is, there are people out there, I think, that really need to have that. You know, I don't know what they went through in the Gulf War or in Afghanistan, Iraq. I know
Right.
that our son did, I think, 2 tours over in Mogul. He was over there. He came back. I mean, he's just as screwy afterwards as he was before. But no, I'm kidding. But you know, I don't see any change in him whatsoever. I mean, he's exactly the way he is today, the way that he was at 15. So you know, I mean, he's that same
Fortunate.
Yeah.
mentality.
Well, a lot of them
But
come back.
I see a lot of people that do come back that really, truly are lost. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, people that truly are looking for help will be the ones that aren't asking for it.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
my opinion. And that's what I look at in a lot of things. You know, when you know that we have a law practice, and when a client comes in and a client is telling me that every part of his body hurts and he's involved in an accident and he's sprouting off certain aspects of things that the normal person would know about, to me, I don't usually take the case. I think it's a garbage case.
Right.
But if the guy comes in and I'm watching his body movements and I see that his one shoulder is either twitching or he can't sit up straight or his neck is bobbing back, that's the person I think who's the one who's hurt.
You're right, and I'll tell you, when I'm interviewing a veteran, you know, it's almost like I draw a little stick figure and I'm asking very specific questions, especially if someone's telling me they served in Vietnam. I ask them certain things, you know, if they're on a ship and land, because I know there's
Right.
things that went on there. And depending on how they answer me, I'll be able to know if they're telling me the truth or not. And, you know, when someone, like you're saying, depending on their answer, especially if they say, well, I think so, I'm not sure, it's either yes or no, you
Yeah.
know. There's no in between.
Well, I
Yeah.
think like Tom said, I think there is probably thousands and thousands of people out there that don't know that people like you exist.
Yeah.
That would be, you know, it's a godsend. If we can get this word to them that there are people like you that can help, it's a godsend because, you know. I
And a
mean,
word out to all of these contractors, you know, I mean, that especially pick up these day laborers, you know, they should really be ashamed of themselves, because
I
if
agree.
it wasn't for the veterans, they wouldn't
I
be
agree.
doing what they're doing today. And, you know, it's always about the almighty dollar and how can I save a penny and how
And-
can I
and
pitch. But then I go back to the government again, and that's a whole nother issue, all right?
Yeah, but you know,
That you don't want me to get into.
the funny part about these guys picking up the day laborers it was just a matter of a few years before these day laborers were taking their customers, and now they have the big businesses, and those guys have the
Well,
little
this
businesses.
is true too.
Shame
but,
on
know,
you,
They're
you know.
not paying the taxes that should be paid, but, I blame, the municipalities for that as well.
Yep.
They could easily go in to these 7-Elevens and round them up and take them away. But the problem is that the jail, especially with ISIS, not ISIS, but it's called ICE. It's,
Oh, yeah, with ICE.
you know who ICE
Yeah,
is.
Immigration Customs Enforcement.
They're so overburdened, and
Right.
they're not looking for the people that aren't causing the problem. They're looking for the people that are running the drugs or are
Right.
serious, weapons, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the municipalities are very lax in doing that, and I think that if they did get off their tush and did something more about the illegal people that are here in the United States and hanging out at these 7-Elevens and diverted them from the contractors that really need the help, I think that our veterans would have a better shot at getting a job. And not only from a work perspective, when your mind is constantly busy, it mends itself. I know with me, if I'm sitting idle, my
Right.
mind is racing, and I don't want it to race. I want to be focused on what I'm doing at every minute of the day because my mind is working. I think if a veteran is in a position where he's coming back from a situation like Iraq or Afghanistan and he was boots on the ground, you don't want him idle. You want his brain
Right.
working, and I think that that's important, and that's what they need
Well,
to
we're
do. Am I
getting
right or wrong?
Well, yeah.
We're
But you
getting the
need to-
queue. I think, again, we could ask for your information again, give it out one more time, and I know I personally would love to thank you. You've been a godsend to, I'm just glad that we could have you here, and you could
Thank
get the
you.
word out to these people that might need your help, and I'm sure there's plenty that do.
Okay, so
One more time.
it's www.veteransprotected.com, 516-847-2182, and www.veteranhouse.net, 516-605-0971. I had to think about that number.
And if you
for a
had one
second.
thing that you can look into that camera and tell these people that are watching tonight, what would you tell them? Don't look at me.
I would tell them to go to somebody and make sure that they're accredited, make sure that they're abiding by the rules and helping veterans. There are some people that are trying to force veterans to pay for these extra services, and certain things they can charge you, but there's certain things they cannot. Just always check who you're going to, because sometimes I hear about veterans being taken advantage of, and I don't like it.
And they can
And,
learn that through your website?
Yes, you can come to us if you have a question. We'll call you. If you need something else, call us. We will do our best to connect you with whatever you need. That's what we're here for. I have a very large network of people that I know are doing the right thing.
Thank you very much for watching part 2 of this episode. We appreciate a special thanks to Cablevision Channel 20 for allowing us to air the show, and we will see you next week at same time, same channel. Have a wonderful week.
Have a blessed week.